Hello, I'm Don Mayer, and welcome to a brief overview of Kingdom Classroom Management. The teacher's attitude and demeanor are critical to successful classroom management. One year I had an out-of-control classroom. Everyone was upset, the parents, students, and yes, even the teacher. The teacher blamed the children. He called them disrespectful, spoiled, and unruly. I supported this teacher with training, an experienced mentor, and a full-time classroom aide. Mid-year, the teacher left, and I had to hire a new teacher. Within 2 weeks, the new teacher came into my office and thanked me for giving her such a great class of well-behaved students. Classroom management is not a set of rules reinforced by punishments. Teachers who choose such methods will constantly struggle. The new teacher changed the culture of that classroom by focusing on relationship first and rules second. When strong relationships are cultivated, fewer and fewer rules are needed. Classroom management systems are necessary tools, but only provide a starting point. Even the best classroom management program will begin to break down if not motivated by relationship building. 4 basic principles to cultivate relationship and hope in your classroom. First, listen. Have you noticed God seldom tells people they are bad? He asks them, "What are you doing?" Get really good at asking open-ended questions. Rather than point out what a student did wrong, ask them, "What are you doing? What can you do to fix this? Can you tell me why you did it? Who should you apologize to?" Your questions will guide the child through the process of taking responsibility. Simply telling a child they failed and giving them a punishment does not help that child take responsibility and learn from their mistakes. By listening first, you will avoid a lot of misinformation and poor judgment calls. Heart issues, not rules. For example, students in this classroom will be kind, listen to one another, and take turns. Ask your students how they would like to be treated, and they will tell you things like, "I want respect, to be heard, to be treated fairly, to be honored." Put that list of values up instead of class rules. Then use your questioning skills to ask the children if they are living up to the classroom's ethics. Your students will become like you. Focusing on the positive, celebrate and draw attention to what is going well in the classroom. Point out the students that are doing what you've asked. If you must speak to a student about poor behavior, do it quietly. Never use shame and humiliation. It will destroy any trust. Plus, your students will copy your poor example. Your actions teach your students to be like you. If you are a bad example, your students may not say things to your face, but they will definitely speak that way to their classmates. When you make a mistake, admit it, then fix it. I had an 8th grade teacher, and most of the students were apprehensive about being in her classroom because she seemed very strict. But once in her classroom, they found out how fair she was. For many, she became their favorite teacher. She led by example, apologized in front of the classroom whenever she made a mistake. Her students rose to her high standards because of her example. This one's important. Never mad, only sad. Emphasizing love doesn't mean we throw out the standards and accountability. You can have firm limits and still build relationship and connections with your students. It is key to never act out of anger when correcting your students. When disciplining your students, picture how Jesus would talk to that child. He would be sad but never mad. Traditional classroom management skills incorporate a great deal of manipulation, such as fear, anger, and condemnation to force students to comply. These methods are counterproductive to the success of our students. They destroy self-esteem, reinforce lies, and cause division. A kingdom classroom is a God-centered, hope-filled place. By choosing to work with the Holy Spirit, the teacher gains a partner who truly understands each child's heart. Remember God's promise to his children. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." To learn more, I recommend reading Teaching with Love and Logic, Loving Our Students on Purpose, and attending a Capturing Kids' Heart seminar. Thank you very much.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. Dawn, it's good to see you again. And just to be here to talk about kingdom education. And specifically today, the video, it's on classroom management. And so I'm excited to hear more from you about what the Lord has downloaded and showed you over the years about classroom management in our kingdom schools.
Yeah, Renee, it's great to be back with you. This is an area that's just near and dear to my heart. And it was not... This was learned kind of through the school of hard knocks. I made a lot of mistakes over the years in how I manage kids and how I help teachers to understand how to manage kids, and just a lot of input from the Holy Spirit on how to be a little bit more like Jesus. I start off talking in that video about the attitude and demeanor. And that really comes out of Matthew 12:34. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Mm,
And I've seen so many teachers that just struggle with their classroom, but they don't have a right heart towards their kids. And
yeah.
the kids see it. It's just like you wrote on the board, I don't like you guys. And then they walk in the classroom and go, okay, you don't like us? Well, then we'll for
Yes.
you. So the teacher's approach will really change the behavior in the classroom, especially that story that I shared at the of the transition of teachers in the middle of the year. That was a really difficult year, and
Yeah.
the teacher that left was struggling so hard. In
Mm,
fact, one day he actually stood up in his classroom and told the students, "You're the reason why I can't do this well."
wow.
Yeah. And so it didn't work out. But then when that new teacher walked in, the moment she walked in the classroom, I knew that it was all going to be different.
Wow.
Um, it's I liken it to I took her to the front of the classroom, introduced her. She stepped a couple feet forward, and it's like she grabbed the um the rudder of the ship basically and just righted it. And like everybody said, look at me, I'm your new teacher, and just do what I say. And they did. It's like all the kids' eyes just locked on her, and I knew from the minute she stepped in the classroom that it was going to be a different place.
Wow. This is powerful. That testimony is so profound. Really says a lot.
Yeah, it was a relief and fun to watch that come about because it could have been a very disastrous year.
Yes.
So
That's really
yeah,
good. I think that the piece about how much ownership and how much the teacher is such a pivotal role and how they interact with the students is
mhm,
something that Kingdom educators, like, we need to look at our demeanor. We need to look at what's in our heart, what's in our heart, and how are we responding to the students? What are we carrying?
right. Yeah, it's really important. I talk about listening.
Mm,
It is such an important thing to learn how to listen well. And I learned that through Hard Knocks as well. I was getting ready to have a meeting with a really contentious parent coming into the office. They were ready to just let me know how I'm not doing a good job.
gosh.
And I was in prayer and I was before the Lord, and he showed me a picture of when I was really young. I used to like to watch the old sailing movies, the two wooden ships coming past each other and shooting at each other and stuff. And I saw this picture of myself as one ship and the parent as another ship, and we're getting ready to pass. And and the Lord goes, "You can't shoot your guns." I'm like, no,
Yeah,
I am going to get blasted, and I'm going to be ready to defend myself.
right.
And what the Lord let me know is that he basically just said it to me in this way: if you don't shoot, they won't reload.
Mm, wow.
And it just shifted my whole mindset and how I approach problems. It's like I'm going to be the first to listen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the one to get to dive in and tell them what's wrong and all. It's like, okay, let me hear it. My wife went through a very similar thing in a classroom meeting one time. She taught fifth grade in our school, and she was out in our prayer house at Bethel just wailing before the Lord, like, what do I do about this meeting? And the Lord just said, make sure the mom knows you love that child.
Wow.
And for her, it wasn't a matter of like coming head to head. It was like, how do I come alongside and let the
Wow.
mom know I love that, I love your child too, and we're going to go together with this child.
Yes.
And again, it's all this thing about learning to listen, so that the parents know that you know what's going on. The student knows that you know what's going on. So be the first to listen is really a key aspect.
Yeah, it's powerful. Like, when you say that, I'm thinking, wow, listen to the Lord, like, inquire of the Lord, and then listen to the student, listen to the parent, listen to what's really happening beyond what we actually sometimes can see in the natural.
Right. Yeah.
Powerful.
So the all those things just have kind of became natural at our school. Really focusing on what the hard issue is and not so much what the black and white rules were. Um, Another thing that teachers really need to learn is that the students are going to be just like you. Um,
Yes.
Jesus talks about that in Luke 6:40. He says, when a disciple's perfectly trained, they become like their teacher. And if you are a cranky, kind of angry person, you're giving your students permission to do that.
Yeah.
So you really, it's a lot, like I said, it all comes down to your heart. And then
Oh,
the other important thing that I said is probably the most important thing is never mad, only sad.
mm,
That is actually a Danny Silk quote, and he spoke that to me, and it just stuck in my heart so well. And we often discipline out of anger.
yeah.
I mean, granted, those kids make you upset. They
Yep.
get you going, and they push those
They can do
buttons.
some things. Yep. They know exactly what to do, especially when you're having an off day and you're like, okay, I'm not going to react. I'm going to respond because
Yeah,
I value relationship with my students and I really want to hear the father's heart for that.
yeah.
That,
I've actually had to tell students, I'm pretty busy right now. I can't talk to you, and had them sit in a chair
yeah.
out in the hallway while I got calmed down so I could talk to them. It wasn't that I was busy. It's just like, no, my heart is not in a good place. I
Yes.
can't address this. That child really messed up and I'm really ready to just take his head off and I can't do
Yeah.
that.
Oh man, I think we've all been there certain times
Yeah.
over the career, right? Of just like, oh, what's going on? Give me a moment. Give me a moment. It's
I
really
was
good.
doing a teacher training recently and I thought about that picture of Jesus, that little cartoon picture I put in the video of Jesus talking to that boy. And I thought, what it would be like is if Jesus sat on a big rock out on your playground, and every time a child misbehaved,
Mm,
that you went out and let Jesus talk to him, and you'd stand there and listen to how Jesus would talk to them.
wow. Don,
And
that is such a great visual. Oh my goodness.
Jesus wouldn't go, "Well, you little brat, what do you think?"
Right.
He
Wow.
would not condemn them. He would ask them, "What are you doing? What are you supposed to be doing? How are you going to fix this?"
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it just that picture just kind of rocked me when I was training those teachers. I've
Yeah.
talked about this, I've drawn that picture, but just the fact that if I just went out and watched how Jesus talked to a child, I don't think I live up to to what I should be doing some of the time.
Yeah,
So
in the video, those questions, I think sometimes we're so assuming as educators because we do have wisdom and knowledge and we've been around kids, those of us have been teaching
right.
for a long time and we've been trained, right? So those questions that you mentioned in the video are so profound. I don't know if you have any testimonies or something around how students respond to those kinds of questions.
Well, it's some of that comes out of a program called Restorative Chats, and some of
Oh,
it comes from another program called Capturing Kids' Hearts, which I talk
oh,
about a training that's there. There's even some love and logic mixed in there as well, love and logic. But the biggest thing is with the restorative chat, we actually switched up how we talk to the kids.
oh,
Generally, when kids are brought to my office and there is a problem, I go to the victim first and I look at them and go, "Oh, tell me what happened." Okay, and then I turn to the victim, the perpetrator, and I go, "Wow, that was really unkind,"
oh,
And restorative chat, you start with the perpetrator, you start with the one who caused it, and go, "Tell me what was going on. What were you
yes,
thinking?" And you know what? Sometimes you find out that, well, 3 days ago, this kid hit me and I'm still mad about it, you
yes,
know? And it was just crazy the things that would come out, but you understand the motive behind the child. And then you walk them through and get them to the point where they're both forgiving each other.
mm,
And and you don't and basically you work through the root cause of what happened, but starting with the person who caught what seemed to have caused the problem rather than the
yes,
victim is it feels counterintuitive, but it
yes,
works really, really well because that's getting down to listening first. That's getting down to tell me what you're doing, tell me what you're
mm,
thinking. So,
yes. You
and
discover
then
so much about what's going on in their minds and instead of just making those assumptions. I mean, those question stems, I want to write those down and just put them on the clipboard when we go out for recess duty, like remember to ask questions instead
yeah,
of assuming.
we would actually do that. I would have teachers put it on their desks. They would carry it with them, and I mean, they would just, "What are you doing? What are you?"
Yeah,
Hey, it's okay. It's okay.
yes, yes. Just because
Yeah,
it's so counterintuitive, like you were saying, compared to what we've been taught, or even more so what's been modeled for us throughout our own personal lives as educators when we were kids, and what we've seen in school systems, even what we're taught in our credential programs, sometimes isn't always aligning up with this idea of really listening to the student.
Yeah. Yeah, there was lots of times where I just thought of a story of a new kid to our school. He'd come from public school. He actually had a hard time in class, and he was out on the playground and he grabbed another kid around the neck. And the yard duty worker said, "You can't do that. We can't grab around the neck." And she was off at a distance. And he went up to his friend. He wasn't arguing with fighting me, grabbed him around the neck, and she blew the whistle and told, he shouted his name and said, "Come here." And the boy put down his arms and walked over and climbed up to the top of the jungle gym and sat down. And the yard duty lady was like, "I'm going to wring his neck." and then she got over there and he just got defiant. He shut down, and I ended up coming out on the playground because he wouldn't even move. He wouldn't even talk to anybody. And
Oh, wow.
turns out it took me an hour to figure this out. He never heard the whistle and he never heard his name called.
Oh,
And
wow.
he just let go and gone and sat on the top of the jungle gym because that's what he was doing next.
Right. Right.
But when you fail to hear what the child is thinking and you react to what you think they're doing, you can be wrong, even though it looks so obvious to you.
Yes. Wow, that's a great example.
That's why I said in the video, you'll save a lot of heartache if you learn to be a great listener.
Yes,
And then,
that's so true.
Yeah, partnering with the Holy Spirit really helps.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. So good, Donna. So good. I know one of the things in the video you talked about was like the heart, like the condition of the heart and relationship over rules, and what does that look like for us in our classrooms, because we need to have some sort of order or structure. So as kingdom educators, how can we keep that relationship strong and stable, yet have these rules or order and structure?
Yeah, it's very important that you're really clear with the students about what your expectations are. And when the expectations are clear and concise, then you can ask the student, when you say, "What are you doing?" They know what the expectation is supposed to be. And a lot of times they will tell on themselves. Not always, but they will. And so that piece of being really clear of what you expect. And I would tell my teachers, just make sure you don't surprise the students with a rule. If something's going on and you haven't stated that, that really isn't acceptable in my classroom, then you need to sit down and have a conversation with them, and nobody's in trouble. Okay. This just happened, and that really doesn't feel good for me as a teacher. And we need to not have that happening in our classroom. And then again, if you're gearing your classroom around the ethics and not the rules, it's like, does that feel like you're being kind? Does that feel like you're being protective of other students? Does that feel like you're listening? Those are all things. So it takes a little bit more time to establish things rather than the teacher just saying, "Here's the new rule, nobody do it." That seems to be really quick, but it doesn't help train the kids. So
yeah, that's really good. It's almost like creating a culture, like a classroom culture based on values and what we all agree upon that is good for all of us in this classroom, versus just having a list of rules. They actually know the why behind what we're valuing.
Right. And it's really important that you're consistent in your things. Sometimes teachers are like, today they're a little more forgiving, and things just, today we just won't pay attention to the fact that kid's pestering another kid. You've got to be really consistent. And we're going to put a link to an article I wrote called "When Love Dominates a Classroom" several years ago, but there's a story in it. The teacher's called Mr. Smith. That's not who it really was, but I want to read to you a little bit of a clip of what he was talking to me, how he had to shift and how he had to learn this. And he said, I was always about relationship. And he was always wanting to be a friend to everybody, be connected with everybody. But he said, but relationship without order leads to chaos and contempt. I had to create a predictable world. I had to learn, I had to change the way I used my power. I learned incorrect consequences affect attitude as well as behavior. And then he quoted it's Ephesians 6:4, where where Paul says, do not provoke your children to wrath,
Mm.
but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. It's really important that we don't provoke our students to wrath, and we tend to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what actually did in that one teacher that had to quit halfway through the year. He was so much about being the captain of the ship, pounding the rules in, that the kids felt hated by him. And then once they felt hated, then they just quit responding.
Right.
And I've had several teachers that have gotten in that hole, and it's like a cancer that spreads in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Once a couple of students get together and go, you see how she treats the boys differently than the girls, and then the whole class will have conversations on the playground about how unfair this teacher is, and pretty
Yes.
soon the whole thing
Yes.
starts to unravel, and it's hard to
Yes.
bring back. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I love what you're saying about consistency and really listening to them and being consistent in that, and a heart posture to really love them. And I think it's interesting because the teacher had a lot of relationship, and we may feel like we're doing that, but it's what are these students experiencing? So
Right.
we may think one thing as a kingdom educator, but is that what's really happening on their end? Like, is that how they're receiving it? I think that's interesting.
Right. Yeah. And so that brings it all back around to, are you listening to them? Are
Mhm.
you hearing what they're saying?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, and I was thinking about those students that maybe on the outward, they look like everything's okay and they're following the rules, but then maybe there's not like that deep relationship. And as kingdom educators, we want to have discipleship, relationship, interaction, because we really do care and there's love and there's hope being released in the classroom. I just think about that sometimes with some of my students who it appears everything's okay, but maybe they're really not okay, but we
okay.
can't really tell.
No, you can't. So finding a time that you can spend with your students one on one and getting to know
Mhm.
them. It doesn't take a lot of time,
Mhm.
but you really need to also be paying attention to how each child reacts to things.
Mm.
Another story from my wife that she tells on herself is she had one boy who was just loud, boisterous. You could tell he came from a family that did a lot of practical jokes, a lot of sarcasm.
Yeah.
And she actually had to keep him in the back corner of the classroom because he was up and down so much. He was distracting other students. She just kind of kept him contained back there in the
Yeah.
back corner. And class was getting ready to be dismissed. And he jumped up and was being really loud. And she just kind of not really yelled, but just really firmly said to him, you sit right back down and don't you move, knowing that he could handle that, right?
Yes.
She looked at this little girl right down in front of her, and the little girl's eyes just got big as saucers. And she realized, oh my, I just scared that little girl to death,
Yes.
you know? And so you've got to be aware of what you're doing, how it affects the entire classroom.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Wow, that's so true because they respond so differently. And
right,
I can really relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people watching this video can relate to that. It's fascinating to see and to talk about these things and to hear examples and really take away. Like, I love the clipboard, Don. Like, I just want to make a clipboard of those question stems from the video and keep that with me till they become a part of who I am, so that because we're still conditioned in a different way.
right.
So yeah, thank you for sharing today. I know we're going to put some links attached to the video so you can get more resources, but this has been so great. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for,
yeah, there's so much more we could talk about on this
you know,
subject. We could go on for hours and we don't have time, but just want to introduce you to the idea of where's your heart? What's your heart doing?
oh yeah,
And how's that being dumped out on the kids? Is it dumped out as hope and love, or is it dumped out as command and control? So
right. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So good. Thank you so much. It's been so great. And I know we're going to do more videos. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Renee.